Okay, it's 6 o'clock and it's time for vocal coaching with Simon. That's me. Hello, people. I hope you're well. I am going to carry on from where I left off on Monday. We're going to carry on with the breath and into making tone today. So I hope you all remembered to get a drink, because when we're using lots of breath, I know that one's empty, but the other one isn't. And I've also made sure this time that I wore appropriate clothing, because last time the t-shirt rode up. So hopefully I can lift this up and not show my anatomy. We're a bit tight for space here, and it's a little bit amateurish at the moment, but we are working on getting the sound to be a little bit better and getting the visuals to be a bit better. And I'll probably be in the big studio next door. But what I don't have in there is the piano. So I'm hoping to move all that into the big studio next door, so that when I start next week, I am going to be doing 5-minute daily tips, which I thought would be a nice bite-sized thing for people to follow each day. I've had some really lovely feedback from the first session, so thank you for that. And so today we're going to get straight into it. So what we'll do is we will push the chair aside and we'll get into it. We're going to wait, just see if a couple more people join in, and then we're going to crack on. So let's just recap while we're waiting for people on what we talked about last week. We talked about breathing and how important it was to singing, and that it was one of the 3 main areas of the voice and how we produce a vocal. So recap the 3 main areas. We had where the actual air came from, which was obviously the lungs, but also the control of that, which is all the diaphragm, the abdominal muscles, and even right down into the pelvis. So that's really important. That's our foundation of the voice. Then we've got the actual action, which is all here in the throat, the larynx, the vocal folds, everything that happens around there. And then finally, we've got what makes it sound pretty, and that is the filters. So the tongue, the teeth, the larynx, the pharynx, the nasal cavity, the soft palate, the hard palate. All those areas are there to make your voice and shape it a bit like you would get if you had, for instance, an acoustic guitar. At the back of an acoustic guitar, you've got all the wood and the hole, and that's what gives it its resonance. The strings actually make the sound, so they're like your vocal folds, and then the box bit behind is what gives it its warmth. And that's essentially the same way that the voice works. So, but we need to power that. With a guitar, you power it with your fingers. With the voice, we power it with the breath. So that's why I spend so much time talking about the breath and making sure that we're using it from the very top to the very bottom. But before we start all of that, we've got to be physically warmed up. And I can't reiterate this enough. Where a lot of people go wrong is that they go to sing and none of the big support systems are ready to go. Now, you wouldn't go out for a big marathon, or you wouldn't go out and do some vigorous exercises, or you shouldn't do, without stretching and warming up a little bit first. I'm an avid cyclist. I'm a mountain biker, and I love to go out on my bike. But I always spend the first 5 minutes in a really low gear, warming my legs up, so that once I start on the high hills or on anywhere like that, I've got my muscles are warm and ready to go. And it's the same for singing. And what often happens with singers when they warm up, they think this is the bit I need to warm up. But although that is part of it, the main bits you need to warm up are the big muscles. And that's the abdominals, the intercostal muscles around the lungs, the back muscles, really important, your neck, and these big muscles that come down here on the front and on the back. All of these muscles need to be warmed up before you even start thinking about making a sound, because these are the support structure. You'll often hear this spoken about, that support the voice, use the diaphragm. And that always confused me, because I didn't know what people meant by that. So a over time, I found out and had some really good teachers that explained it to me. And essentially, this is what we're talking about. The big muscles in that area are supporting this tiny little area here, because this is the bit that takes the most and the brunt of our efforts. And so in order to keep it safe, we need to support it with physical strength. So let's start with some warm-up. So I'm going to get rid of the chair and then we'll crack on with some warm-up. So please join in. Okay, so the first thing we do is have a little stretch out. So we get the sense of the abdominal muscles. Okay, that's everything from the bottom of the rib cage down to the pelvis, all the way around this band around here. We get them warmed up. Okay, so what the first thing we're going to do is have a little stretch. Now I know you can't see all of me, so I'll maybe push that up a little bit further. There we go. All right. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take a little stretch, interlace the hands. Okay, put them above the head. All right, and we're going to open up the intercostal muscles. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is take it over to the right. Okay, nice big stretch, feeling that there, and then up to the center, then over to the left. Okay, and really feel that sense of opening. Now, I am showing my belly still. And really feel that sense of opening up here, right across this side bit, because when we're breathing, that's essentially what we want to do. We want to open up all of those muscles, because when we come to breathe for singing in a minute, we want movement there. Okay, so, and also we need to stretch this front bit here as well. So what we're going to do is do the same again, take a stretch back, open up there, and then open up the back muscles, take a stretch forward, and just arch the back a little bit so that you're stretching open those back muscles. Okay, really good. I would also suggest, before you start singing, doing something a bit more physical to get the blood pumping and to get the breath moving, because what we spoke about last time was actually using the top and the very bottom of our breath, which we don't often do. Often we are just using a very small proportion of our breath. So the bit that is when we're sat down, we're breathing very shallowly. When we're just moving around the house, we're breathing very shallowly. So we need to kind of get used to, I'm going to put this up a bit, hopefully that makes it sound a bit clearer. We're going to get used to using this whole breath. And I'll talk a lot about that in future, the whole breath. So take a deep breath in and hold it and feel that top of the breath. You can get no more in, and then release until you can get no more out. That's the bottom of the breath. Okay, so this is what we did last time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So this time we want to get the muscles engaged into this. So we're going to warm up the breathing muscles that will help us sing. Okay, so place your hands under your rib cage. Great. And I find this one, if you do this one for a little while, you can feel the work going on. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a shh sound. Okay, so we're going to start to engage these muscles that are under the rib cage. If you go shh nice and hard, you should feel with your finger and thumb the muscles pushing against it. Shh. So we're going to do 4 of these in sequence, and then we're going to do them in 4/4. So we're going to go shh, 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 shh. Make sense? Hopefully it does. All right, let's do that again. All right, so 4 sets of 4. All right, really paying attention to where that effort is going. So it must be going into the hands. So the hands are under the rib cage and we're pushing them out. Here we go. And shh, 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 shh. And hopefully you can see on the video that my hands are going out every time I do that shh. Now that's not the breath, that's the muscles, okay? So what we're looking for from the breath is we're looking for, as we're getting rid of that breath, okay, the muscles are getting tighter. When we breathe in again, we expand this area here. Now I spoke last time about active exhalation, about actively getting rid of the breath, the bit that we actually think about and physically action, if you like, is the out breath. So when we're actually singing, this means that the in breath becomes the relaxation, which means that all this area here then is completely relaxed and ready for when we start the process again. All right, so now, because we're going to start to bring in tone, we're going to change that sound slightly. So we start to bring in tone. What we're bringing in is the vocal folds now. We're starting to bring them together. And I'll talk a little bit about the vocal folds in a minute. So same thing again, but this time we're going to go zzz, okay? Zzz gives it a tone, okay? It doesn't have to be any particular pitch. For those of you who are beginners, don't worry about pitching this in any particular place. It's just a case of making tone at this point, okay? So here we go. All right, 4 sets of 4 again. And okay, all the time we're doing this, see if you can mark where you are in your breath. So don't take too much breath. One of the biggest issues that singers have when they come to me is often that they're over breathing in. So they're using more breath than they actually require for the task they're being asked to do. So for this 4 zhuzhes, okay, I'm not taking a huge amount of breath. I'm just taking enough that when I get to the end of it, I've run out. So that means that when I've run out, and if I started again, I'd release that breath and be ready for the next task. Okay, so let's do that one more time. Here we go. And good. And then the breath comes back in again. All right, so what we've been doing is warming up these muscles. Anything that creates resistance with the air makes and activates these muscles down here. So zzz, zzz, v, all of those sounds stop the air or slow it down. They don't stop it, actually. They slow it down, which means it creates friction as the air goes out, or resistance. And that resistance is what the muscles are pushing against. This is something called subglottic pressure. Okay, so subglottic pressure we'll be going into a little bit more later on, but it's what we use to keep steady tone. Okay, it's the same for speaking, sorry, as it is for singing, but for singing it's really important, especially when you've got the long tones. All right, so we've got that warmed up a little bit now. We've started to feel those muscles working. Okay, one other just little area I wanted to talk about was something in the back. Now, if you can see where my thumbs are there, I don't know if you can hear me properly. I'll come back towards the mic. The thumbs are in just a little bit of the area of the back. This is another area that's really useful to activate. I call them the chichas. In fact, I didn't make that up. Anne-Marie Speed did, a very venerable singing teacher who taught me many years ago at the Royal Academy. Those muscles back there, if we can get those going when we're doing the zzz, those are really good to get them pushing forward. All right, let's go on to starting to make tone. Okay, so we're going to make tone and we're going to use the breath that we talked about, this top and the bottom of the breath and feeling where we are. Okay, so we're going to do a simple hum to start with. So for those of you who haven't sung for a long time, we'll just do a simple hum. We're going to go into something a little bit more complex and then we'll go from there. All right, so we'll just start with a G, which is there. Okay, and we're just going to go and hold it for as long as you can. Okay, while you're holding your hands under your rib cage. So what I want you to get a sense of is, particularly as you get towards the end of your breath, that you're engaging those muscles. Okay, so see if you can see mine moving, and hopefully yours are doing the same. Here we go again. Okay, and And then I get that little squeeze at the end where I just get to the end of the breath. And then you can see my shoulders don't move. I just release the muscles around the abdominals and I let the air back in. Now, this is really important and something we're going to focus on now. It's something I call bounce breathing. It's basically where you're using this active exhalation I talked about in my last session. And we are then at the end of that active exhalation, relaxing and letting the air back in. So that's the passive bit. So passive inhalation. Yeah. So if I stand sideways, and I've got plenty of it, so you should be able to see it. As I breathe out, okay, all the muscles are tightening up. As I breathe in, I let them go. Okay, I'll do that again. Now I breathe in and let them go. You'll notice that nothing is happening up here. And this is really important for singers because what we don't want is unwanted tension around the throat, particularly as we're about to sing, which often happens when we breathe in. I see this a lot. When people breathe just before they're about to sing, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll see, and the shoulders go up. It's the first thing to move. And what we're trying to do is prevent that from happening. That's why all the action kind of goes on down here. Okay. So we're going to go back into that long tone again on the hum. Okay, is where it is. And you'll hear, as I sing that over time, the slight little anomalies kicking in. And this is where the pressure changes are happening. Because, of course, what's going on is your lungs are slowly emptying. And in order to sustain the same tone, you've got to sustain the same flow of air. So as the lungs are emptying, you have got to actually increase the pressure in order to keep that the same all the way through. I know that sounds a bit confusing. Let me try and say it another way. Your lungs are reducing in pressure as they empty. In order to keep that pressure up, you've got to increase the tension in the body down here to keep that going. It's like a balloon emptying and you're pushing the final bits of air out, or an inner tube if you're a cyclist like me. Okay, so you'll hear those little anomalies, and what you're trying to do is smooth them out as much as possible on that long tone. And that's the subglottic pressure we're talking about. That's the pressure below the vocal folds that the air is pushing against in order to keep that tone solid. So by guiding that air with these muscles down here, we can keep that tone as level as possible. You also might have heard at the end there that I had a little bit of vibrato. That occurs naturally in a lot of people when they get to the end of a tone. Often what happens is we get that natural spin in the voice happen and we can't prevent it. It's often where the larynx tilts forward as you get to the end of your breath and you're making that extra effort. But that's fine for now. Okay, so let's do that again. Here we go again. So we've got that's the note we're looking for. All right. And we're going to sing that over that hum. And then we're going to open that up to a ma. Okay. So we're going to go ma. Squeeze. And let the air back in. Okay. So we're getting a real sense of getting to the end of our breath, that we're actively getting rid of our breath through that tone, active exhalation, okay? So that when we get to the end, we can allow the air to come back in. It will come back in automatically. You shouldn't need to do anything. You shouldn't need to drag the air in. You should just be able to go, I'm at the end of my breath. All my body wants to do right now is breathe in. Thank God for that. Yeah. So when you don't need to breathe past that point either. So I see a lot of people when they're breathing in and doing the next bit going, and doing that kind of thing. We don't need to do that. Most phrases, and we'll talk about phrasing in a later session, most phrases don't need all that amount of air. I was looking at a section from Rent with a client the other day, and it was quite a long section, and she only needed probably 3/4 of her breath maximum. And that was a really long phrase. So for most phrases in most songs, we don't need to be taking maximum breath. So just keep that in mind. You'll find that I will divert off into other areas now and again. So hopefully I don't make it too confusing for you. All right. So let's go to the next bit of the exercise. We're going to change the tone a little bit now. Okay. So we're going to do the same again with it. Ma, and then just go up one. Ah, and feel what happens to the breath, and particularly if we're keeping our hands under here, what happens to the muscles as we're moving. What you'll find is as you're going up that one, you should find that the muscles just increase their tension a little bit as you go up one. So we get and we can feel the tension building throughout the note. Okay, so once we start to get hold of getting that strong, nice long tone going, it doesn't matter if there's no vibrato there. That just comes with time, and comes for some people and it doesn't for others. It's very teachable, but obviously in a non-interactive session, it's something I can't do with you. But if you do want to see this further, then by all means get in touch in the contact form and we can discuss a one-to-one. And in these difficult and tricky times, we can do it over Zoom. Is my preferred platform because I can see you, hear you, and we can collaborate really well. So if you fancy doing that as a one-to-one basis, give me a shout, and yeah, we can organize that. That'd be fab. But in the meantime, what we're going to do now is we're going to let the tone run down. So we're going to do a little fifth run, which goes like, hopefully you can hear that. Okay. So we're going to go, ma. Yeah. And again, we're just focusing on the breath at the moment. The quality of the tone doesn't really matter at this stage. It's literally, we are trying to feel what it feels like as we get towards the end of that breath. That's what I really want you to get hold of in this session. Obviously, with the virus knocking around as it is, if we can get really strong in our muscles that support our lungs, that's going to be so useful to us in the future. So, okay, hands on the rib cage again. All right, we're going to go and then go down that 5 notes. We're going to ma. Okay, ready? Here we go. After 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ma. Right to the end of the breath. Great. Okay. All right. Now let's see what happens if we add different words to the tone and what happens to that here when we do that. So we're going to do ma, me, me, mo, mu. We're going through the vowels, okay, with a m at the beginning. So that's ma, as in grandmama, me, a name I call myself, ma, me, may, as in the month. Hopefully we'll all be out of confinement. Mo and mu. Okay, so we're going to go ma, me, me, mo, mu, and just see what happens to the breath there. Okay, after 4. 1, 2, 3, and ma, me, me, mo, mu. Right to the end of the breath. Breathe in. All right, now let's try and do that in a cycle. So we'll go over it several times. All right, so I want you to get used to getting rid of all that breath and bringing it back again. Get rid of all that breath and bringing it all back in again. Okay, here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Ma, me, me, mo, mu. Ma, me, me, mo, mu. Okay, and you can practice this at home. Just go over and over this. And what I want you to get the sense of is when you get to the end of that phrase, mu, we get that release down here in the diaphragm and we start again. And we should have no tension up here. Yeah? Ma, me, me, mo, mu. Ma, me, me, mo, mu. Okay, and we can just keep going around that cycle and that'll keep the tone and the breath going. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about in my next session. So we're going to start on Monday. I'm going to start doing these in bite-sized 5-minute little chunks. And the first bite-sized little chunk is going to be talking about tonal onset. So onset of tone. How do we start singing? Okay. And if there are any other suggestions that you've got of things you'd like to look at, could be songs that you'd like to investigate further. It could be some stuff for people who make speeches or who talk in front of crowds. Whatever it is, give me a message via the website, or if you want to do it on the comment section of the YouTube video, you can do it there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up on the YouTube video. That'd be really good. And we will be going over these onsets of tone. But before I leave you today, there's just one quick exercise to leave you with, okay? And I'm going to be going into this a little bit further in the 5-minute bite sessions, but this is the single best exercise that I think any singer can do. It's called the siren, and what it does is it starts to warm up the larynx muscles. Okay, so this is we're moving on now from this area, okay, to this area. All right, so this is the single best exercise for warming up the extrinsic muscles of the larynx. That's the muscles that support the larynx. Okay, it's called the siren. Now there are some important provisos with this, that we need to keep it so that it's not a singing exercise, it's a muscular exercise. So keep that in mind when you do it. It's also something you would do incredibly quietly. You can do it anywhere, and that's what's brilliant about it. So what you're doing, like we did with the breath, we got to the very top of the breath and the very bottom of the breath. What we're doing now is getting to the top of the larynx muscles and the bottom of the larynx muscles. So we're stretching them right out. Okay. So we do this to an NG sound, an okay, as in sing. Yeah, sing. Okay, what you'll feel is that your soft palate and your tongue will meet. Like that. And so the siren occurs with that. The reason we do it that way is to keep the larynx in the right place and to keep the tongue out of the way. The tongue is a big old muscle. It comes right down into the base of your throat here, and it can get in the way of your larynx moving cleanly up and down. So what we want to do is keep that out of the way, and this sound helps with that. All right. So here's the siren. Here's how it goes. You start at the top and go to the bottom. Okay, and you try and get as high as you can, right up into that squeaky part of the voice at the top, really quietly. I hope you can hear that, because that's quite quiet. Okay, so keep it really quiet. Practice that for next time. I'm going to go into it in more detail, but for now, thanks for joining me. I hope you found it useful. If there's any questions, feel free to pop them on a message via the website vocalcoaching.co.uk, or via my Facebook page at Vocal. If you look up Vocal Media on Facebook, I'd love to hear from you. But for now, from me, goodbye.